Hi, this is Wil Greenstreet, and you are listening to Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM.
You were born in Holland?
That I was, yeah. 1943.
At what age did you come to Australia, and when did the love of music start to develop?
I was 9 when my family moved to Australia, and living out in the country for a while. We lived in Orange for 3 years, and then luckily my mother met a man and decided to marry him. I have 3 brothers and 3 sisters, and we moved to Sydney. So after 3 years in Orange, we moved to Sydney. And I guess around age 14, not 4, but 14, I heard a guitar player play at my house. And he was sitting around the wood stove playing. He was a friend of my stepfather's, and he was playing, and I was so in awe of this guitar sound. And he decided at the end of the night to leave his guitar at my house because he was going somewhere else. So I got to that guitar, and that was my decision right there. I started playing straight away. Yeah.
Talk about some of your early bands. Before we got to see you in Focus, there was The Questions and also a band called The Epics. Can you tell us about those bands?
Yeah, there was a band even before that, John. The first band that I was in, actually my neighbor, 2 doors up, Brian Godden, he also played guitar, and his father was a multi-instrumentalist, and he taught us a lot of ukulele kind of chordings and tunes, right? So we were playing together a lot and always going to the beach and playing. You know, we go to Manly Beach, we go to Harbord Beach, Freshwater, Curl, and one day we were on the bus, and we met this guy, and he said, "Oh, you guys play guitar?" He saw our cases, you know. And he said, "We have a band, you know, so we're looking for guitar players." So we got into that band straight away. It was called Bix Bryant and the Raiders. And so that was the first band, and we started playing at Brookvale, in the Brookvale Town Hall or something like that. We played there and various other gigs, but that led to me, that Raiders band led to me. Actually, I was living in Bondi, and the Raiders had a gig in the Bondi Royal Hotel. And one day I woke up and I heard a band on the beach in Bondi, and I walked over there, and it was Rolling Storm and the Statesmen. And Duncan McGuire was playing bass in that band. And I was in awe of that bass playing. So I walked down and had to meet him, you know. So I met him, and he said, "You know, our guitar player's leaving. Are you interested?" So I did a transition very fast, you know, from the Raiders, which was folding anyway, to the Statesmen, and the Statesmen turned into the Epics. So Rolling Storm quit, and then we went as a kind of an instrumental band for a long while. We brought in a keyboard player, multi-talented guy called Rory Thomas, who we loved. Duncan and I loved this guy because he could play not only organ and piano, but he could play sax and trumpet, right? So he came into that band, and that caused a great conflict with the drummer. He didn't like what we were doing, and so he left, and we teamed up with Bill Fleming. You may know some of these names. Bill Fleming he's an excellent drummer. And so that we then became the Questions. And we were playing as the Questions, Manly Pacific Hotel. It was called the Canopus Room, and everybody called it the Can. And we played at the Can for nearly 3 years, 6 nights a week and Saturday afternoon. And we used to do floor shows, all that kind of stuff. And then we also had a talent quest on Wednesday night. And who should turn up to the talent quest one Wednesday night was Doug Parkinson. Yeah, and I'd gotten to know Doug a little bit before that. He came to my house, and we started exchanging the music that we were into. He turned me on to Mustang Sally and 99 and a Half Won't Do. So I learned those tunes. he got up and sang. He was sensational, but he didn't win. This Oriental girl with big white boots on sang these boots were made for walking, and she won. But Doug got the gig in the band, right? So we didn't actually have a singer. We were all singing, and we were all singing top 40 stuff, and Doug could really sing. So that was a real beginning right there, because Doug took us to the next level, right?
He certainly did. In Focus was such a wonderful band with such a powerful vocalist up front as Doug Parkinson, but it was a real musicians band too, wasn't it?
It definitely was. We were probably more into the music than anything. We were definitely not into the business. I mean, I think there was a lot of bands that really weren't in those days. They were just for the music itself. And, we were not business-minded at all. We had management. Eventually we got management, and that helped us a lot, But, we never recorded a live album, and we were a great live band. I mean, it's just crazy when I think about it now, the amount of great music that we played that just got away.
Actually, I spoke to Doug not too long ago, and he said it's one of his main regrets that band never actually recorded an album of any sorts. It was just a string of great singles, but no album.
Yeah, that's what we did, right? We just say, we got this song, let's go record, We were so off the wall around this stuff, we'd have a song, we'd get together, rehearse it, go into the studio and record it. That's it. There's nothing to it, We're just really into playing the music and playing live. We very rarely even rehearsed, We mainly did was we had a small repertoire of about, maybe 20 songs at the most. And we just play them, we play them every night, and we played extended versions and allow things to happen, like when we run out of ideas, okay, what's going to happen now? And, we would just let new things happen every night. And that's a spontaneous way of playing,
You also got to play on many sessions that are now considered classic Australian recordings. Any personal favourites at all?
I don't know. I did so many, mainly the sessions that I was involved with that, say, Peter Jones was conducting. I love playing with Peter. He's a great piano player, and later on he played in a band that I put together called Sanctuary. Great piano player, and he was one of these guys that in sessions he was so relaxed, he'd make you feel good, so we'd always have a good time. So, but I guess I recorded with Johnny Farnham and Colin Hewitt and Russell Morris and Brian Cadd. I mean, I don't know. There was one time I played on so many commercials and so many people's records, and then our group In Focus had hits too. So I'd turn on the radio and I'd be hearing myself continuously. It was like pretty amazing for about 2 or 3 years,
Now, the history books mention a short-lived band called Rush that had a very brief existence. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, it's one that I try to put out of my mind a lot, actually, but it keeps coming back in my mind too, So that happened, that band happened. In Focus split up, and Johnny Dick and Doug went with Vince Maloney and Teddy Toy, and they took off to England to go record there. Duncan and I started this group called Rush. Steve Yates was the keyboard player. I think his brother was a very famous piano player, keyboard player. And the drummer, I can't think of his name now, but he was a bunch of trouble, the drummer. Yeah, so because of him, he had kind of maybe that's why I can't remember his name, because I don't really want to mention it. But he had some serious drug problems, and we get caught out at gigs and fired because of the way he looked and how he was missing the drums when he was doing drum fills. Rush was a Rush band, really big talent in that band. There was Malcolm McGee, Mal McGee, right? So we had some fun, but I don't know. Mainly, I felt pretty down about that band,
Another great vocal talent you worked with was Leo De Castro, who I always thought was a very underrated talent here in Australia. Tell us about working with Leo.
Yeah, Leo. Well, that was with Duncan too. After In Focus split, and he had various groups. I never really officially played in that band, you know. Like when In Focus was done, I was done also, and I would just go out and jam every now and again. Dunk would say, anytime you want to come by, you know, and they'd be playing the Garrison or something in Paran, and you know, and that was Leo De Castro, great voice and funny guy, really great sense of humor, and yeah, so that was fun. I also recorded with them. They cut some records at TCN at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But that was kind of my experience with them. It was really like I'd just go jam when I felt like it, you know.
Now, the soundtrack to the movie Stone, was that an opportunity for you to show another side of your talents at the time? Was that what you were looking for?
Well, I wasn't actually looking to do that, but what happened was my girlfriend at the time, Isabel Morse, who still plays in the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, as well as her sister, Sarah Morse. They still play there, but that was my girlfriend at the time. Her sister, Helen Morse, who's a famous Australian actress, was married to Sandy Harbert, who is the writer and the producer of that movie. And of course, because of that situation, he was practically my brother-in-law. We got to see him a lot, right? Whenever he was in Melbourne, I got to see him a lot. So he just said, I really want you to do the music to my movie. And I said, oh, really? You know, I said, well, I've never really done one. You know, I'm a rock and roll guitar player. You know, I hardly know how to write a note, you know. But he said, that's exactly what I want. I want you to do it, and whatever it takes for you to do it, I want you to do it, you know. And I said, okay, well, can I hear the script and all that? So he started sending me the script, and he started reading it to me and all that. And I started getting ideas. And I thought, okay, I'll do it. So that's how it came about. It was just one of those things, and I learned how to do it. It took me a year to write that movie score. And I was also in it. He put me in it so that I would get to know the characters in the play.
That's right. Yeah.
So I wrote a theme for every character in the movie, as well as incidental music. And I did it all with a stopwatch and a metronome, and then going home to Melbourne and doing it. The movie was shot in Sydney. And then I went home to Melbourne and wrote all the music, and then scored it all. I learned how to do that, and then took it in the studio and recorded every bit of it, and then sent it to him. And I said, put this to your movie. And he did, and it worked. So after I did that, Sandy Harbert called me from Sydney. He said, we just put it to the movie, and he said, you can die now. Which I guess is a compliment, you know.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Now, prior to that, there was another soundtrack in there as well, which I don't remember too much about, Getting Back to Nothing. Do you remember that one?
Right. Mm-hmm. So what that was a surf championship, a board riding championship at Bells Beach, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. And so they asked me, as well as Bruce Woodley and Hans Paulson and somebody else. I think there was 4 of us that wrote music for that. And they gave us 3 or 4 pieces each to write. And that's about it. I wrote several themes for that movie. It was kind of like songs, you know. Right.
Now, you also spent some time with Jerry Humphreys in his Joy Band. I guess by that time you'd had a bit of experience working behind charismatic lead vocalists. Did you have to be aware of staying a step back and letting the singer shine in those types of situations?
Well, I don't know if I was really even aware of it, John. You know, it's just kind of been my upbringing. I played music with singers, either that or we were singing ourselves, and really being like a huge Beatles fan. I still am. I love the song form. I love, you know, the art of song form is when there's vocals, you support that vocal, and then you play lines in between, right? It's all complementary. It's a structure and it's arrangement, you know. So I learned how to do that. Now, Jerry Humphreys, I did some sessions for Jerry. He brought me in as a producer for one, and then another one he had Robbie G for another one. And but I played on both of them and had a blast. And I loved Jerry. He was an awesome, funny, creative, beautiful guy. You know, I just loved him, and we had so much fun there. You know, at that time, I was really freelance. I was in the recording studio. I had my own band. I was jamming with all kinds of people, and then Jerry wanted me to play, and I did that and had a blast. You know.
Now, during those great days, those glory days back here in Australia, were you always a frustrated jazz player in there just waiting to come out?
Not at all.
No?
In fact, no. That's the interesting thing, is that I didn't really know about jazz. Although Bill Fleming had played us Miles Davis, not Kind of Blue, but Miles Davis, Porgy and Bess. And we'd listen to this in the dark, you know, in a candlelight, and just go, wow, isn't that the most incredible music you ever heard? But it was more a mood. We'd listen to Ray Charles. That's kind of the closest we got to it, you know. It wasn't until Mahavishnu Orchestra, when the Mahavishnu Orchestra came to Australia, and also when they put out their music, like when Inner Mounting Flame came out in 1971, and then Live Evil, Miles Davis, and Bitches Brew, and those things, and I started listening to that, and then you know, the things like Weather Report, all these things started waking me up, and I started going, from there I started going back, you know, like Miles Davis. I say John McLaughlin led me to Miles Davis. Miles Davis led me to everybody, because who didn't play with Miles Davis, you know? That's right. And I by the time I actually went to America in 1975, I was into Coltrane, and and Miles Davis and Coltrane played together. Miles Davis and Charlie Parker played together, you know. So it was. I went backwards. At one time at a party, though, I have to say this: when we were playing at the Can, one night at a party, we had a girl singer that was singing in our showcase one night there at the Can, and she invited us back to her house, and she played me Eric Dolphy, and you know, everyone in the band was astounded by this music, and I had never heard anything like it. Eric Dolphy. Now, Eric Dolphy, I named my son Eric. His middle name is Eric, so I have since gotten very hip to who Eric Dolphy is, you know. But at that time, I knew nothing about jazz at all. I was mainly, you know, like, you know, I got into it slowly, like I just said. It just, and it happened in a backwards kind of fashion, you know. So
it was a real learning experience for you.
Oh, it hasn't stopped, you know, since I came to America. You know, I think, you know, now I've been playing saxophone since 1981. I took it up, and it's been a constant study, you know, because once you commit to an instrument like that, you know, you can't do it as an ignorant, you can't do it in an ignorant way. You know, you have to really listen to the best players, and the best players are John Coltrane and Charlie Parker and Eric Dolphy, and there's a whole slew of them, but these are the main guys, right? Yeah. If you listen to these guys all the time, then you're going to get seriously influenced. I've been practicing nonstop. I still am. Yeah, go ahead.
So have there been many trips back to Australia since your time in the States?
I've been back, let me see, 3 times. I'm probably due for another one. You know, I've been back 3 times.
Do you keep in touch with many of your old colleagues from over here?
Well, there are some people that I've been constantly in touch with, like Cole Loughnane. He's a sax player, fabulous sax player who played with Duncan's Ayers Rock for a long while, and he's still going. Cole Loughnane is a phenomenal Australian sax player. We're in touch. We write each other every day. We send each other jokes and all that kind of stuff, and we're always discussing music. And Johnny Dick, I've been in touch with a lot. Johnny Dick was the drummer with In Focus. In fact, Johnny Dick came here to record exactly a year ago, and we recorded a whole CD's worth.
Ah, terrific.
Yeah, what we did there was we took In Focus hits that I wrote and turned them inside out, turned them into jazz pieces.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're extended pieces. And I'm still looking for a deal in Australia. If anyone's listening that would be interested in giving us a deal to put this thing out, because it's a bit of history, and I think it's also pretty amazing. I'm playing sax and he's playing drums, and he's, he said that he'd never really played like that in his life. And even though he was heavily influenced by Art Blakey and people like that, and he did an incredible job on this, on playing jazz, He was so happy.
Oh, that's great. There'd have to be some interest here in those recordings for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true. And it's funny you mentioned Cole Lachlan. I just did record an interview with Cole just a few weeks ago, in fact. So he's a great player.
Oh, he is, yeah. So I'm in touch with Howard Leslie, who was the bass player in the Raiders.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty amazing, yeah. And he was 10 years older than me when I joined the band, and he still is, of course. And he's so I'm 67 now, so he's 77, and he's living up there somewhere.
So what initially prompted the move to America?
Well, it was an awareness thing. Like one thing, well, there was a few things that prompted it. One main thing, Mahavishnu Orchestra. I saw them in 1974. Stone was finished and out, and I saw Mahavishnu Orchestra in Melbourne and in Sydney. I flew up to see them again, and I was so turned on by that music. And then all the other music I was listening to also at the same time was all current, say, fusion music that I was very interested in. And it was not really happening in Australia, that fusion thing. I started my band Sanctuary with Graham Morgan and Big Goose and Mal Logan and people like that. Renee Gayer was singing with us. And that band was not coming across. And I was listening to this music from America and saying, well, why don't I just go? Because everything I'm listening to is American. And it's all happening. It's all happening now live. So I had the money and I took off. I made it set a date and I took off in February of 75. And I arrived in San Francisco. I was there they gave me a 6 months visa, and I spent 4 months of those 6 months in San Francisco. And I was out every night hearing John McLaughlin, Billy Cobham, Weather Report, Chick Corea, I mean, you name it. And as well as all the great jazz like McCoy Tyner and all the people that were playing at Keystone Corner. I mean, I didn't miss a thing. I was just out every night.
Did it take a long time to establish yourself as far as work goes? How long before the work started to come in for you?
Well, I had to get legal first.
Yeah.
And John, I actually came in as a visitor, right? So they gave me 6 months. And so I spent 4 months in San Francisco and then went to Los Angeles, which was way too polluted for me. I didn't like it. And then I went to New York and I loved it. And then, something happened in that trip where I'd invented a banjo that I made my own neck to back in Melbourne before I left. And I took that with me, and I belong to an organization. It's a bit complicated to explain, but I went to perform for them in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, and I went there and did a performance for 4,000 people, and in the audience was somebody I knew, and they came backstage and said, "Billy Green, I would recognize you anywhere," and it happened to be Doug Lavery, who was the drummer in can you hear that noise?
Yeah.
Okay, a second. Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, so Doug Lavery had moved to America and married a girl and was living in Houston, right? And he played in Doug Parkinson In Focus for a short while and left. Hang on a second. Okay, got it. Yeah, so he's the one who recognized me on that stage, and he said, "Billy Green, I'd recognize you anywhere." And I went, "Oh my God, I can't believe in Minneapolis I bump into Doug Lavery," right? So it was weird. And he said, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I got 6 months, and I'm looking around." And he said, "Well, do you like it?" And I said, "I love America, you know." And he said, "Well, look, if at the end of it, if you decide that you don't want to go back to Australia and you want to stay, give me a call, and then you can come and stay with my wife and I in Houston, and I'll put you in touch with a lawyer who'll get you a green card, and I'll get you a guarantor, the guy who was my guarantor. Ah. So how's that for an offer, right? Mm-hmm. So that's exactly what I did. That's what I did. And so I decided from New York that I was going to stay. And I lived in Houston for a little while with him, and then his band went on tour, and I was acting as a roadie. So it's really a very long story of how things come about, but I'm still the same. I'm terrible at business, and I love the music, so I've just been following my heart, really, and going from thing to thing, and having experience, so many experiences, Yeah. So I played guitar until 1981, so from 1975 to 81 here, and I got very, very good. By 81, I got to be so good, because I was really chasing, something that required you to be good,
Yeah.
And then the saxophone came in. And that happened in '81. I took a trip to Australia, and I went back to visit my family. And on the plane ride, you know how sometimes on a plane trip you can look out the window and really see your life really clearly. And this is what happened on this trip. And I was flying back, and I was going, what do I really want to do with my life? And out it came. I really want to play saxophone. Here I'd been listening to John Coltrane, nonstop since San Francisco, and going, well, why don't I just do that then, And I went back to Los Angeles, where I was living at the time, and the guy on the opposite hill to me played saxophone, and he came over to me and he said, you play guitar, and he said, would you teach me guitar? And I said, you play sax, would you teach me the sax? So we swapped instruments. He gave me a sax and I gave him a guitar, and we did one lesson each, and that's where I started.
Wow. And you do quite a bit of teaching yourself these days. Does that still help you make you a better musician?
I love to teach because one, I think as a musician, it's a kind of a duty to pass it on. That's one thing. It's also a survival thing. Like, you can make money at it, and it's very respectful, really, as long as you have good students. Mm-hmm. And then it also keeps you in the frame of mind where you're thinking, what is really important? Like, this person is vulnerable and open to my suggestions. What can I give that will take this person on their journey? And what can I give them that I didn't get, because, it's taken me all my life to unfold to where I am now. And I think a lot of it I could have learned very young,
Yeah.
But, and there's no complaint there, mind you. I'm not complaining. I love my journey, but in teaching, I always keep that in mind. I try to when I have young students, 12, 13, 14 years old, I try to give them a really good basic knowledge of improvisation and blues, and play them really good players so they hear it straight away. They can't say, it wasn't until I was 33 years old before I heard Eric Dolphy, It's not, that isn't right, It's wrong. That's what's wrong with our culture, that you can go across the radio dial. It's very hard to find good music like that. Mm. Mostly people are dominated by, radio stations and the media period are dominated by corporations and trying to sell stuff. So you're not going to hear stuff of education, really,
Got to talk to you about your work on the Empire State Building. How did you get a gig like that, and how did that come to you?
Well, isn't that amazing, huh? That is, I call that the best gig in the world. It really is. I'm having the time of my life, and I'm in my 4th year there now.
Wow.
So how that came about is I'm a professional, and the manager of the Empire State Building found out that I like to play solo sax, because I've done it in lots of places. I've done it in restaurants. I've done it in all kinds of situations. In Austin, I even played in the street for 4 years when I lived in Austin, Texas. And, I've gotten really comfortable with playing a single line and spelling out changes, like the chords to a song, and playing in between the melody, like that kind of thing. It's very challenging, and I love to do it. And so anyway, the manager found out about me through some word of mouth, chain of events. And he said, could you come and play for a night? And I said, okay. The Empire State Building, like, okay. And so I went up there, and they just gave me this executive treatment. They had people show me where I could put my sax in the office and take me where I was going to play. It was really a great deal. It was very royal feeling, And then at the end of it, he said, well, how did you like it? And I said, well, I loved it. And he said, well, could you play the rest of the week, like Friday and Saturday too? And I did that. At the end, he said, well, what do you think? I said, it's fabulous, And he said, well, how available are you? And I said, very. And he said, well, could you play for the rest of the summer all the way to Labor Day, which is, September,
Yeah.
So I said, sure. Okay. So I had a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night gig for 3 months, And then at the end of that, he said, well, do you still want to do it? And I said, you bet. And he said, well, let's just play it from week to week. And we've been doing that ever since.
It's fantastic. And the saxophone and the New York skyline at night seemed like a perfect combination. It must have been an inspiring backdrop to play to.
It is, and on a perfect night, like say, say summer and it's hot, and there's a breeze up there, and the place is packed, and everybody's in a good mood, and I'm playing the slowest tunes you can imagine, like haunting bluesy tunes. I don't think there's anything better than that. It doesn't get better than that, I don't think. I can play. They by the way, they just don't bug me in any way. I don't clock in or clock out. They don't tell me to do anything. They don't tell me to play anywhere in particular.
Wow.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I'm just very free. I'm the Empire State Building's saxophone player, kind of like, their mascot.
Tremendous.
Yeah, and everybody takes pictures of me, right? So from all over the world. So the whole world is there, right? So everybody from, Japan, from Turkey, from Australia, from Chile, everybody's there, and they're all like 10 photographs at the same time. So a lot of people send me photographs of myself playing.
You must take a lot of requests up there. What would be the most requested song on top of the Empire State Building?
Well, it would have to be New York, New York. And it's probably one of my most unfavorite tunes to play. But I try to get something out of that too. And of course, then there's Happy Birthday too. Those things happen. They're part of what goes with the territory.
Yeah.
But I play really great standards, and I can play some really good Miles Davis and Coltrane stuff, and nobody seems to mind whatever I do.
Let's talk about your album of Beatles covers. How do you go through the song selection process for a project like that? It must have been a tough job.
That was really tough. In fact, when I did it, I stopped at 10 tunes, but I had a list of about 50 that I wanted to do, and I thought, well, okay, later on I'll do another one, and then another one, something like that, So I just stopped where I stopped, and I just took on each tune as I felt like doing it, but not particularly, there are so many great tunes that I could actually do in that style, no problems, So maybe at some point I'll do some more,
So do you still strap on the guitar from time to time?
I teach guitar. I have several guitar students, and I've had lots of them over the years. But the saxophone really takes up most of my thinking. Really, that's really where it is. By the time on my nights off, on my days off, so if I'm working Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and I'll teach one day. The rest of the time, I'll be practicing, and I'll practice 6 or 8 hours in a day. I don't have time left to do anything else, or even inclination. I kind of lost it with the guitar a little bit, I guess, because I think it was the saxophone that I really wanted to do, and that became very clear.
Tremendous. And just before I let you go, Will, upcoming plans? What's on the books for you? Anything?
Well, I have my group called Sparks, And I have a CD that's released also of that music, which is all original stuff, and it's all me playing everything except I recorded it all with two different drummers, my son on drums and also one of his teachers and one of the guys I play with all the time. And I did everything else. I play bass and I play keys and all that stuff. So that's one of the main things I'm doing. And then also I have a book that I've been working on for a couple of years that looks like Jamie Abersold is going to pick it up. It's called Fourth Obsession. It's a music study book on fourths. It's a very complete, in-depth study on fourths.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's on the immediate agenda, and I'm very interested in playing out more. So my group, Sparks, has been playing out for the last couple of months, as well as doing the Empire State Building gig, which is laid back and slow and nice tone. And then the Sparks gig is much more very intense and exploratory, and it's more in line with what I really want to do, So I'm interested in bringing that group out more,
Hey, Wil, it's been fantastic to speak to you. A real treat. It's been very difficult to get through this interview without calling you Billy, I must say.
Well, you can call me Billy, but it's not really my name anymore, So a few of my Aussie friends still call me Billy, and they can't get over it,
Yeah.
And some of my family still does it, Legally, my name's been Wil since before my son was born, because I changed my whole name. My real name was Wilhelmus Anolis Maria Francis Groenewegen.
Wow.
Which is impossible. Yeah, so I changed it to Billy Green as a stage name, and then later on legally I changed it to Wil Greenstreet.
Well, it's been fantastic speaking to you, and you can rest assured your contribution to Australian music history will never be forgotten. And it's been just a pleasure to speak to you today, Wil.
Well, that's wonderful, John. Thank you for having me. It's nice to do an interview like this. It's kind of interesting, You really make me think about my past,
It's been an amazing journey for you, and we're really glad you shared it with us today. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, John.
Thanks a lot, Wil. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All the